what fluid thinking is. And one of the most important misconception which people have is that when you think like a fluid thinking specialization has no scope. It's not like that.
Absolutely.
Within fluid thinking, specialization and core expertise and domain expertise do exist, but the way you do it is not in a compartment but beyond the compartment.
Yes.
You It's not that you can contain a water in something and the water only takes the shape of where it is. Water has freedom to take shape anywhere it feels like having its shape. So
True.
fluid thinking is something like that, and I can tell you this age is the age in which fluid thinking has its relevance. A very simple example is the example of artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is not only about engineers and software
Yes.
professionals. It's about a doctor in telemedicine, in this medicine business. Artificial intelligence are used by doctors more than anybody else. In music, in video editing, cinematographers are using it with nothing to do with mathematics or software. So things are getting fused together. Fusion is happening everywhere. Interdisciplinary approach is the hallmark of societies, and
Yes.
our educational policy 2020 also talks about fusion,
Perhaps.
not
Yes.
fission. It talks about fusion.
Absolutely.
And if you
Absolutely.
look at the history, as you said, Ashish, from the very beginning when man started thinking, the first thing is that we never bracketed him into a compartment.
Absolutely.
Plato, you cannot say that he's a philosopher. He was a mathematician also.
Absolutely.
He was into medicine also. Aristotle the same, Socrates same, Miletus was the same, and then Pythagoras. He was a mathematician, an astronomer, a cultist, and you can say a person who had political ambitions also. Plato
Absolutely.
and Socrates, all along the field, geniuses cannot be bracketed. It's another thing that we ascribe one aspect more than the other,
Yeah.
but it
So
doesn't
here,
mean that he was only that thing.
yeah, here I would like to add that, sometimes people may think that this is too far-fetched an idea, or what relevant it may have in our lives. But if you look at, for example, Silicon Valley, and if we start looking at the leaders in Silicon Valley, or the people who are kind of calling the shots in artificial intelligence or technology, for example, Elon Musk and all, you would see that there is a technological bias, or the central core base in their understanding of the world is tech heavy. Their understanding of the other islands is limited. So that's why there is a lot of criticism of how Silicon Valley as a city is kind of standing. And this is a very important observation, that a lot of our youngsters may get in awe of Silicon Valley, that that's where the technological advancement takes place. But when we look at how a city is being developed, we see that the aspects which emerge from the other side of the technology, or non-STEM side of the area, that is where it lacks. And what it does is that it skews the worldview, the entire worldview, towards what is important for the world and what is not. And this is very important to understand, that if we are creating future societies, or our societies, there is a very tech heavy emphasis in the minds of the youngsters. Incidentally, if I can say so, that right now you can see a lot of advertisements coming for pushing coding to the youngsters. Like you see them everywhere. And parents are gullible, and they would obviously start thinking that something has happened in the world, which is suddenly the world has woken up to teaching their child coding at the age of 6. Unfortunately, it is not. It is just a venture funder driving a company who is pushing heavy advertisement in front of the society, and telling the society that you are nobody unless you learn technology or coding at that age. It is simply a market pushing you a product. But it is very dangerous, because in terms of education, our minds, or the parents' mind, can get confused, that what is important at the age of 6. Education can be very simply and free at that time, even by simply introducing your child to a tree, or teaching that child the importance of nature, or making him or her plant a tree. And that is very simple, that is free, but nobody is going to sell that product to you, and hence you think that this is not relevant. Coding is relevant, because it is being pushed by a market force. And this is something which is very important, that that initially the the society was being pushed in the direction of technology, and now it is even so pervasive that it has gone to the level of, even 6 years old or 8 year olds. And then when we all start thinking that this is the job in technology, engineers, computer science, and this is what's going to get you a job, whereas it can be a dangerous move, because automation can almost reduce the need of coding. It can almost reduce most of the menial, technological jobs will go away. It will be a fluid mind which will incidentally survive even in the world of technology. And that is something which we need to teach our children, that it is not about, technology is not about technology. Technology is about understanding the sophisticated application of technology. And that is something which we also need to understand. And I think that that is what fluid thinking is all about, that how we are creating a space in our mind or ourselves which differentiates ourselves from a machine. That is something which is important to understand, that because we will be fighting machines, and anything which keeps us just like a machine, we are going to get replaced, or our job is going to get taken away. Yeah.
Ashish, I fully agree with you. In fact, those people, like you mentioned about a software venture from the Silicon Valley, the white hat, and
Yes.
whatever, they're putting
Yes.
hats on
Yes.
the young mind. It's trying
Yes.
to just constrict the mind. It's not good. In fact, the greatest thing about education is that it's applicable all over the world, and it's a philosophy. You cannot specialize until unless you end the college or the school. That's why we teach all subjects in the school from class 1 to 10.
Yeah.
You are not creating
Absolutely.
experts in the school. You know
Absolutely.
what happens? Our mind is obsessive, and our mind becomes a kind of a fundamentalist in certain ideology, because we are creating expertise from the very beginning. That is the reason why expertise should not be obsessed with from the very beginning. Child should learn photography, learn
Absolutely.
drawing, and then they should learn about nature. They should learn everything that is quite possible. They should travel. I think the time has come when the child should travel so that they can see the world. And
Absolutely.
in and this is world, virtually you can also travel and see
Absolutely.
so many things. All the
Absolutely.
geniuses, I agree with you, were travelers. Until
Yes.
unless you don't travel, your mind doesn't travel. You cannot sit
Absolutely.
in a room and conceptualize about the world how it should be.
Absolutely.
You have to move out,
And
meet
like,
people, talk to
yeah,
them.
like, yeah, for example, like I know that you read extensively and you gather knowledge. Like, I mean, when I see your posts and everything, now, I have to say, share this, that, unfortunately, I mean, whenever I go to like IITs and, IIMs, there is one question which I always ask, and that is that what all you read and what are the books you're reading. And unfortunately, most of the time the answer is that either the books are related to technology. It's not across the disciplines, like Plato and Aristotle and Hypatia, or astrophysics, or whatever. It is not there. Sociology, philosophy, Western philosophers, Indian philosophy, it's not there. So I think that what I see is a dangerous sign. And I don't know where this has seeped in, that we can get away by not reading anything. That's the notion in our mind, that it doesn't matter, we have to just clear this exam, we are going to be in that position. But I think that when you see the trajectory of people who are eventually leading the organizations, even like Google or Microsoft, we name them, but when we look at their journeys, we realize that they were not these typical formulaic trajectories. They are well read, they go across disciplines, and otherwise they won't be able to lead an organization like that. And most of the failures in Google, like the most of the products which have failed in the past, if you look at their journey, you will realize that they were tech heavy or led by tech centric minds. So this understanding, or this notion that I can get away without knowing what Plato has written, or what is there in Republic, is a dangerous notion. And I think that that is something which we need to bring back to the society, that unless your knowledge is diversified, you will hit a wall after a certain point in your career. And that is very dangerous in the age of automation, because previously you can get away with it, because it's like fashion, like, thinking that you'll get into an IIT and get into that cushiony position is 20-year-old formula. It is not a formula. It is like a fashion which has come like 20 years back in Paris and or Milan, and then now you're copying it. It is a dangerous thing that we are pushing everyone into that direction. It's a coaching industry driven or fueled concept where you are saying that no, it is very relevant, but it is not. You have to be a very different mind right now. You may be an IIT, you may be an engineer, but it has to be a very different mind than what a mind was 20 years back. And I think that is something which we need to kind of also tell the youngsters that this is the path to remain relevant in the society, because now people are even talking about people like Elon Musk and all. They say that we need to just introduce minimum wages, like a minimum income, because most of the jobs will be taken over, so there'll be no job to left. So what the society will do, so let them give a minimum income. So you are replacing the society with machines and not even thinking about it. So that's the tech centric bias which I'm talking about, that it is such a strong and a dangerous kind of a bias, which I sometimes feel that in the even the AI debate, we all think that it's a debate or it's a space which is left to the technocrats. And as you rightly said, absolutely not. It's a space where a humanities, an artist, and a scientist, everyone has to come together and create that space. Otherwise, our societies will be absolutely skewed.
Yes, Ashish, I understand it is too important a fact to be left to the technicians and the technologists. It is
Yeah,
too important, this
yeah,
artificial intelligence, the fifth
yeah.
age revolution or the fourth age revolution. I will tell you one thing. Who will teach the AI what is human culture and what is bias? The
Yes.
coders, they themselves know
Yeah.
what is bias. They doesn't know what is the definition of bias, where bias starts and where bias ends. Suppose, for
Absolutely.
instance, who creates artificial intelligence? The engineers. The same engineer which Ashish is talking about is that they don't read, they don't
Mhm.
expand their mind, they don't think beyond the obvious, they don't think from the human perspective, the sociological, the political, the philosophical perspective, and they are the ones who are going to write the codes for your artificial intelligence. And here you are happy that the artificial intelligence will do everything. I remember 3 years back there was a beauty contest in which an artificial intelligence was the judge. You know, the artificial intelligence judged a particular race and a particular color as beautiful, and
Absolutely.
everybody was rejected. How do you
Absolutely.
call tomorrow? You can say that the machine has judged, there is no human bias, so it is correct. It is
Absolutely.
not correct. Behind the machine is a human who is
Absolutely.
writing the algorithm, who is writing the code. And here it comes the problem. That person doesn't have a fluid thinking. He is a regimental type. He is a soldier. I call it a soldier. You give an order, he does that. He types
Absolutely.
that thing only. He is
Absolutely.
not a philosopher, a wanderer, a bird, or a visionary who can think beyond the obvious, what is right, what is wrong, what is moral, what is immoral.
Absolutely.
So
And
who
we
will
see
teach
that
them?
absolutely, and we see that day in and day out, this inherent hidden discrimination in the algorithms. We see that, and we have it is such a dangerous sign that whether you see Facebook or whether you see any other these social media platforms, these biases are now creeped in these algorithms where you are differentiated on the basis of your color, race, caste, creed, and it is that bias you're blaming it on the machine, whereas you rightly said that those biases have been creeped in because you have kind of not thought or have been sophisticated in your discussions or fluid in your discussions. And I think that is a very dangerous sign. And what happens is that unfortunately education in India, uh, somehow private education people latch onto the word AI, and they suddenly start thinking that okay, let's create a course, and then start pushing this course in the minds of the parents and say bachelor's in AI. So then you start seeing advertisement in the newspaper where you say AI, let's do a bachelor's in AI. I mean, it is so unfortunate that you do your bachelor's in AI. A bachelor's which is more opening up, including humanities and arts and political science and philosophy, is a much more sophisticated bachelor's or early preparation than simply pushing you in a specialist direction right at that point. but they are doing because of the market forces, and that is something which people need to understand.
Yes,
That
Ashish, that is the reason I wrote few days back on LinkedIn that you cannot leave your human future to the market forces. Just because John Locke and John Stuart Mill wrote that free economics has
yeah,
to be given as free as they want to be, it's not like that.
absolutely.
Situation change, context
Never
change,
free.
and in a free area, I tell you, it's the weak who always suffers. Free doesn't remain always the free. Those who have been reproduced good through an educational system, they will always have an advantage. Take any questions paper. If they ask something related to technology, the bias is that those students who have studied from a good school will be able to answer anything related to YouTube, social media, or to internet, or to so many Hollywood movies. But think about those who are studying in a rural school. Will he able to answer that question naturally? For them, it means he has to learn something. So, as a culture, as a policy, even in a free world, you are making someone advantage, someone
Oh
disadvantage.
yes, oh yes,
So
absolutely.
that is what is difficult. And I tell you, I remember reading Einstein. He was interviewed in Germany before he left for America. He was asked, "How is it that you are so much important? You think differently." One of the fluid thinkers, and why others like so many they are not so famous and they are not able to. They are also Nobel laureate, and so he told a very good thing which I still quote everywhere. I am not dependent on knowledge. For me, knowledge is not important. Imagination is important. I could do what I am because of imagination. I thought beyond the knowledge. I thought about universe because I had imaginations, the daring nature to think.
I
So
have to,
Ashish,
yeah, I have to share this because day before yesterday, I was fortunate to share a session with Neil deGrasse Tyson, the famous astrophysicist, and he said something very profound. Like a question was asked to him that are there any answers or which you would like to find of the questions, and he said that no, my quest is that I want to find out those questions which I don't know about. So that is the real frontier of knowledge, where I don't even know that there are any questions out there which human beings don't know about. And that is something which speaks volumes about imagination, that you are going far beyond in terms of your stereotypes, your own limitation, and you're saying that there are possible areas which I may not know about. And I think that was very profound.
Ashish, in fact, I tell you the real reason lies in our educational system. Those thinkers which are dictating the world or which are running the world as a thinker are those people who are from the same product 30 years, 20 years, or 40 years back, in which we create for a specialization, where we are creepingly thinking about a specialization from the school itself. So, how come we have taught so many things, but we have not taught philosophy in school? It is thing to ponder upon.
Yeah.
They say that philosophy is abstract, so is mathematics, so is chemistry, so is physics. How come philosophy is not taught in school? Until unless we don't expose a child to variety of knowledge, including philosophy as a must. Even moral science has been taken away from the schools. Most of the school don't teach moral science. So how is it that they have added artificial intelligence into the syllabus? One technological subject at the cost of social subject. Man is a social being. Technology is created for your ease, not for taking away your brain and not for taking away our humanity. So we should ponder if some robot has to be taught about a culture of a country, say for Sophia the robot,
Hmm.
who will teach? The person who doesn't know what a culture is, a person who doesn't know what is the world is, what humanity is, what civilization is, what society. He himself has not been ingrained into all those aspects, finer nuances of humanity.
Yeah,
How is he going to write the algorithm? The same
absolutely.
person who just passes some multiple choice questions. Now age has come in which we are giving multiple choice questions to just to out of four you choose one. That is not the way the fluid thinker should think.
I
Why should there
also
be four options?
absolutely. I'll also give
Give them
one
the
more example.
subjective we give them the subjective freedom to
Absolutely.
write whatever they write.
True, true.
Why you are restricting them to four correct answers and out of that choose one?
Right.
What do you say, Ashish, on this?
I would like to add another thing here, which is very important before I forget, is that, in the fight against COVID, I figured that, if our fight was more fluid, it would have been so, we remained focused initially on the health uh, damages which COVID would bring. uh, the immigration, the forced migration, the economic impact, the way our societies are going to shift. So, imagine how COVID is a classical example where, most of the countries geared up in terms of their, health impact, and we all was racing towards finding, solution. And in that race, which is very important, we somehow missed the pieces of puzzle which were to do with the other critical aspects of society. And it was largely because it was not a fluid fight. It was a fight which was largely led in one direction. And that is something which I, when I saw countries and societies fighting against it. Even today, like, we have lagged so much, the impact of which would last for decades, perhaps, into, like, for example, in education or migration or many other aspects. And that is something because, there wasn't an integrated way or a fluid framework to look at the problem of this pandemic of this magnitude. And I think that that is something which it just came to my mind. So I thought that, is very important.
Ashish, few questions have come. In
Yeah.
fact, I would like you to answer them. One
Yes.
question is, what is the difference between critical thinking and fluid thinking? It's just like a straight away question. Could you elaborate
Yeah.
on that?
Yeah, so, we need to understand what fluid. See, critical thinking is a reflective thinking, is analytical thinking, where obviously you are sitting in a state without any bias, but you need to understand the fundamental core engine of fluid thinking. In fluid thinking, you are a learner which is not, or who's cautious of the subject or a disciplinary bias at that particular point in time. I can be a critical thinker, but yet be biased because of my own specific identity or specialization. So, finally, if we just have a wordplay, we may say that, okay, critical thinking may be fluid thinking. But, in critical thinking, you're simply, expanding your, reflective and analytical lenses. Whereas in fluid thinking, you're consciously breaking the subject boundaries. You sit on your chair, and when you devise a model or a project or a solution or a product, you consciously create a fluid wheel, which I've given in my book, that you deliberately force yourself into thinking like how the person on the other side of the discipline will think, which is slightly different from critical thinking. It's like a more active approach towards breaking the disciplinary boundaries. And in critical thinking, simply, you are aware of that, okay, I have to be reflective and analytical. Here it is like you go beyond, like, I've given example of, like, Watson and Crick, like the DNA shape, where he said that because of my physicist background, I was able to arrive at that shape, whereas the other evolutionary biologists were not, because they did not have the physics background. So it's like you become conscious deliberately of the fact, like, if you're a smart city specialist, you become conscious of the fact that there is someone called Peter Giddis, who was a sociologist, and I may be an architect. Now let me just go beyond that and push myself into that direction. So that is the fundamental core difference between critical thinking and fluid thinking. And it's a very learner centric, interdisciplinary, integrated philosophy, which is, I would call it, categorically different than critical thinking.
Ashish, absolutely. In fact, I had also a little bit doubt on that, and you have cleared it successfully. In fact, there is a very nuanced difference between
Yes, very
critical
nuanced.
thinking and fluid thinking. Most of the
Absolutely.
people will
Absolutely.
always try to just make it apart, but I think, like interdisciplinary approach we are talking about, is fluid thinking encompasses all. In fact,
Yes.
it
Yes.
has the ability. It's
Yes.
so fluid that it can encompass critical thinking also. It's one
Yes.
of the aspect. Am I
And
right,
and
Ashish?
yeah, and another thing which I really want to point out here is that, most of the discussions right now in interdisciplinarity has been from the other side of the table. Like, departments have to be interlinked, teachers are interdisciplinary, subjects are inter. Here, fluid thinking is the first probable tool which gives the power in the hands of learner to become interdisciplinary. So there is a difference. Like when I say that, okay, a lot of people, like, I mean, incidentally, you talked about national education policy, and one of the aspects of national education policy echoes the sentiment of fluid thinking so much that I was delighted that I mean, the book came almost 1.5 years ago. And that is that, when you ease out the streams, it is the core aspect of it. And I think that is something which we need to be aware of.
Ashish, there's another question. In fact, it's a little technical. The audience asks is that most of our education system is based on analysis on psychometric evaluation. You do psychometric like psychological, and then evaluate and then promote and say is good or bad. So how does it gel with your fluid thinking? What is the space of psychology in your thinking? Does psychology have any space in your fluid thinking?
Yes, of course, because fluid thinking would obviously, it works on the integrated framework where you would not miss out, or you would not want to miss out on any piece of the puzzle, and you are conscious of the effect of whether that is important or not, and you deliberately bring that aspect into your model. So, for example, if you're creating a product like a smartphone, you would consider all various aspects, including the well-being, impact on children, impact on societies, and so on and so forth. Now, I have a personal, again, and I have to come forward, personal bias against the way psychometric analysis takes place as far as education is concerned, because I uh, consider it as, again, caging the mind on a particular path. Because I find all these tests where you are kind of being judged and tick boxed and put into this box where you are kind of said that this is what you are. I find it a very dangerous weapon which only sophisticated minds can handle. But right now, what's happening is that it is being reduced into the hands of many people. Like, anybody can do psychometric analysis and counseling and this and that. And I think that this is including the objective type analysis, or where we judge how we select our future engineers or future doctors and all that. So, I mean, I have a whole Pandora's box in terms of how that selection should take place, and why any restrictive testing device is dangerous. And that's my personal bias. I mean, I can be wrong, but that's what I think, that I would consider it a little, I'm uncomfortable with the whole approach of how this then sits into you choosing a discipline, and then that sits into how even people are selected through a specific test into an examination. And this is simply because we lack good universities. And I think that ideally a future where you are able to study across and based on your own flourished sort of soul is the ideal pursuit of education, and not where you are being told that this is what you need to do, and because of this pressure of lacking demand and supply. I guess that would be my answer.
Yeah, in fact, we are getting obsessed with terms everywhere. Even in economics, we are obsessed with GDP. But economics is beyond GDP. It's not only GDP. There are so many nuances which we forget. There are countries where societies where GDP may not be as huge. See the Nordic countries, but the kind of value they create, the kind of systems they created, Finland has created a very good educational system in which it has blended with whatever you are saying about the fluid thinking. Finland is working in that direction. And continuing with that, I'd like to ask you, Ashish, a very philosophical question. You talked about fluid thinking. Is it a value neutral? Even the devil thinks. Devil thinks more than what others think. So is it value neutral? Can a devil be also a fluid thinker? It's just a philosophical question. I'm just giving you a hint. Philosophical. How to distinguish between a good fluid thinker and an immoral fluid thinker?
No, I can certainly see your point, and it's a very, very, very deep. It's like the core most, I would say, dilemma, or the core most conflict, that what eventually then be the value, or what eventually be good or bad, or what eventually will be in which direction we should. It's a difficult question, and I don't find myself competent to answer that, because it's much deeper and goes into the realms of. But I think what I can say, without answering it, is that perhaps only a true fluid thinker be able to answer that in the end, because one has to arrive at value at the end of the day. And unfortunately, it may not be the right value, but it may be closest to right if you are a fluid thinker. So that would be my answer, but I'll not be able to answer that.
No, Ashish, I'm happy with your answer. In fact, it's a very thing which was the moment I talked to you and zeroed down on this aspect, I was thinking on these lines only. I thought that maybe someday we'll discuss with this angle. So let it rephrase it in a different way. Would fluid thinking guarantee success? That is the one thing which every parents ask, because I'm also into counseling. A lot of
Yes.
parents
Yeah.
come and
Yeah.
meet me, and even I being a parent, the first thing is that in this competitive world, resources are less and claimants are more. Actually, this is the dilemma. The
Yeah.
people always think that whatever I am doing in this short period of life which I have got, it should add value. It should give
Yes.
value addition in terms of monetary value and positional value, rank value. So can fluid,
I can
no,
I
but
can
philosophy can guarantee.
Yeah, I
But
can
most
answer
of the
that.
people
Yes,
parent desist from this kind of wandering philosophy and a holistic philosophy because it doesn't offer you instant gratification in the form of success. What have you to say on this?
absolutely. So I can definitely answer that and take a value position on it. And I would say that fluid thinking over that pressured walking on a straight line thinking, and I'll put out my neck and say that I would go with the other side, or the fluid side, or the wanderer side, or the experimenter side. And the reason for that is that, in our minds, whether we are a parent or a child, and then we eventually become adult, and we are seeing a society, and we have seen our societies, the illusion of success, or the illusion of that particular aspect where that is the final frontier of my education, where I say that, eventually I'll clear an exam, I'll have a family, two children, this will be house, and this will be my final, picture. Sadly, that picture is never there. It changes constantly, and you are only chasing shadows. I mean, if I can be philosophical about it, that societies which have broken down this particular aspect of where you are chasing shadows, where, like, there are few things which I must give the Western education credit to, is you're not forced to chase an aspiration. And the reason for that is that the societies have by and large become, on many aspects, just. So for example, I'll just give an example that, when I stand in a post office queue in England, I am 100% sure that if, let's say, a queen arrives, she will have to stand behind me no matter what happens. So that is the confidence I have in England, that if I'm standing in a post office's line, and I'm standing there, nobody perhaps will come and say that, move everyone, and I will have to go in front of you. So that very incidents will lower my aspiration to hoard, to, bully, to create, a bubble around me which makes me like this dawn or something. So that is also a function of a society, because when I was in England, I was not very much aspirational, so to say, in saving my own rights. I was happy in that simple, frame, because everybody is almost equal. You're not treated as, like, my professors one of my professors son became a chef, and he was working in a simple restaurant in Oxford. So nobody is judging that gentleman there. And, you're a backpacker, you are not a family man, you're a divorcee, you are a single mother, you're a single father. It doesn't matter. Nobody is going to talk behind you and say, or gossip about you. So your definition of success changes, your definition of life changes. But in societies where you're constantly under that lens, and where every minute you think that if I will not serve this gentleman or serve this person or power, then I will be, something will be taken away from me. And you want to hold, you want to teach your children that don't commit that mistake of being a wanderer, because otherwise. But then when I came to India and I realized that, yes, that is there. But if you change the definition of success in your mind, where I became almost like a wanderer and understanding, and I do bare feet walking. I spent a lot of times in southern India, in rural places, in ashrams, in meeting, in understanding that is there a strength in not chasing aspiration life, and I think that there is. That if there are two routes. One is that you chase aspiration life and you create, this humongous pressure on your head and think that, this is what life is. But if you think that, okay, I am a minimalist and I would not care what the society is saying, there is a merit in it. And I am not saying this just out of purely a position of elite sort of pedestal. I'm saying this, that if you start reducing that pressure on your head, you may be able to live. And even the parents, like, if you just not think that my child is a failure if he's or she hasn't cleared IIT, or my child is a failure if she hasn't cleared UPSC, or she is a failure because she's an experimenter. So what I'm saying, that if you reduce that pressure on that mind, and if that person reduces it, then we'll have a society which will not judge each other, and that is absolutely good for the society, and not like the social media society, where you're constantly judged about how you look, how your nose is appearing, how your mouth is appearing, how you are appearing, and we are under that pressure that where is my car, where is my clothes, where is my, this thing. This is, I can safely say that if we arrive at a society which doesn't judges each other, then I think wanderers has a space, because market will otherwise push you and drive you to mad. There is no limit. There is
Yeah,
no limit.
absolutely.
There is no limit.
Absolutely.
And like, even now when we are even discussing this, education, a higher education degree, by the time children will grow up, will cost you a crore in India. This is what market is driving us to, that you'll have to be prepared to spend 1 crore to get a degree. So
Ashish,
yeah.
in fact, I will just intervene to tell you one thing. This fact that this obsession about 9 to 5 job, this is one of the simplest thing which is creating a lot of disturbances in the education. It's not allowing fluid thinkers to come,
Yes.
because we are obsessed with 9 to 5. That is why creativity, innovators, and imagination type of persons are very rare in such societies, because we are obsessed with 9 to 5. We
Yes.
want that, we want a cushy job from 9 to 5, and then our things are over. But on the other side of the argument, a society which has less resources and more clement, as I always say, their options are very limited. Like, you look into the aspect, I will, because I will talk from that side also, since you are there. So most of the philosophers have been rich. They had their privileges behind them. They allowed them to think, wander in the woods, write poetry. Wordsworth used to wander in the daffodils, and then he had that courage. Something is behind that which pushes you to think ideally. So, continuing this question of privilege and thinking, do you think that two things are required to be a philosopher or a thinker, fluid thinker? One is solitude in a very metaphysical thing I'm talking about. Your
Yes.
mind is filled up with crap, whether I'm getting a job or not, when the next meal would come from. So this is solitude. And the second thing is that, do you think that he has to have a backing of some privilege so that he can become a nomad? If this solitude is not there and the privileges is not there, how can one become a fluid thinker, and how does it help him? Or
Yeah. So, I would say that, yes, by and large, it is true that people who have been philosophers in the West, they had elite background, aristocrats, and so on and so forth. But incidentally, we have examples from the Middle East, India, Indian subcontinent, China, where we also see people who had nothing but were philosophers. And also, so I think that, essentially what I can think of right now is courage. Like, how courage is sits in this whole debate, that, see, if that is one aspect which people can acquire, and courage of a kind where you are able to go beyond that, And I certainly understand that, if the systems are crushing you, and they are even taking away your, even the minimalist requirement, that obviously triggers you to hoard exponentially. I can see that link absolutely, and I don't see India as a country with lacking resources, or any country around us lacking resources, but people, sitting on the neck of these resources and not letting them reach the people. So I think that that is the problem of our country, of our area. But I think that, if individual harbors courage, and courage also requires you to understand what solitude means, or what spending that time in solitude without being rich or elite is. And you inherently develop a framework. See, because at the end of the day, everything is meaningless. And, if we get into the metaphysical realm, then you start thinking about that, this meaningless life for what? And for subserving, a system which is illusionary. So if we start going in the meta, and that is why fluid thinking even becomes even more relevant, that, obviously in our life's trajectory at 40, 50, 60, you are going to hit a phase where you're going to realize the meaninglessness, and then you may go into the realms of metaphysical, or start understanding about things which you don't know about. And I think that that aspect, that evolved faculty, teaches you that I refuse to serve money if it is making me a slave, because it is hardly a life. Because if I spend a life serving something, then I refuse to serve. You kill me, it's fine. But, I will not be a servant to this particular aspect. And I think it is very, I won't call it an elite position, but I will call it a courageous position. And I think that that is one right which, whether a person is rich or poor, has, to refuse. And if the person follows that refusal, I think probably life will be simpler and easier. And I think that that is a very deep kind of a
Yeah,
realm
yeah.
where all the sages or the past enlightened people have followed that. That courage, where you break it, and you kind of break, and then you go, and then you say that, no, this is what my life is. So I think that is probably,
Yes, at some point of life, everybody thinks about the philosophy of existentialism, and more so particularly after the age of 40.
yes.
So, keeping aside those philosophies, I would come to a very particular point. In fact, I would like to talk about IQ and fluid thinking. Most of us are obsessed with IQ, whether a child has a good IQ, bad IQ, high IQ, low IQ. Do you think that IQ has something to do with this fluid thinking? Can a person technically be a low IQ holder and still be a great fluid thinker? What position do you take on this?
I think so. We're talking about genetics and epigenetics, or we're talking about inherent frame, and acquired knowledge or wisdom. I think, when we are focused on, or when we talk about geniuses in societies, often we think that geniuses are gifted, born. Obviously, I don't take that away. They have inherent some exceptional ability. But, when we see spelling bee competitions, when we see child prodigies, when we see that, oh, this person is a genius, and, we will never be like that. I have, again, going through the life history of these people in fluid thinking, I identified that maybe there is a link, and maybe it's not that simple as it appears. You can very well be a late bloomer. You can be a mediocre student in your school. You can even think that, or somebody can would have told you that you have low IQ. Fine. You, even with that low IQ, or somebody saying you, I mean, I don't agree with that, but somebody telling you that you had low IQ or you had a poor report card, I think if you cultivate a learning space for yourself, where you start exposing yourself to different streams, slowly but surely you will be a late bloomer. And, I have a very interesting way of looking at this, is that I think that uh, people can learn a lot about a field in the space of 5 to 6 years or 7 years. So today, if you think that, all everything is lost, and I mean, like, I was not a technocrat, or I was not an engineer in school. And let's assume that today, because it becomes very essential to hold on to your jobs. So imagine that you had no understanding of technology. You are from a sociologist background, you are a 30, 32, 35-year-old person, and suddenly you are looking at a job in a semi-tech company, or integrated tech company, and you want to learn. Now, I think that even if you think that you have low IQ, or you don't understand math and all, I think that with the resources available to us, and I think within a period of 4 to 5 years, you can acquire knowledge. And with your current age, because I find it unfortunate that a 8-year-old or a 9-year-old or a 13-year-old is asked so many questions which we are able to actually answer post 30. I mean, I can say about myself that most of the things which I read in my school, it went above my head. I had no understanding because it was too sophisticated for my mind. So I can be a person of low IQ. But then when I look at those texts right now, I find them fascinating. And I say that, oh, this is what they mean. Like even Wordsworth's poems. I mean, I used to know them by heart, but honestly, I did not know what he meant at that time. So I wrote essays, brilliant essays, stopped school, but had no understanding of it. So I think that at 30, if you start absorbing a subject, and with internet at a fingertip, you can acquire a much more sophisticated way of thinking, and that is a great power, and it goes beyond your IQ. And I think it I am a strong believer in that is possible even at 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. It's possible, as long as you, like, I mean, if you look at Biden, I mean, he's 78. So at that age, if a person thinks that, okay, hang on, I want to learn a new skill, you can in 3 years, 4 years time, you can. So I think that it is your frame of mind where you say, I want to be continuously evolving, and I will not stop. And whether I had low IQ or not, let the world decide, but I will keep on learning. And that's why it's important for us to create simplest of text. Like, writers have this duty to write. Like when I write, I make sure that I am able to understand it like a 10-year-old. So it's the duty of the writers, and it's also about the vernacular language that, it's very unfortunate in India that, some just because, English, your English is poor and you don't understand it, you think that I'm not intelligent. My IQ is low, whereas you can be brilliant in, if the initial education was in your language, you could excel. So I think that is also a very big tragedy of India.
In fact, Ashish, there's so many concluding points from your answer. In fact, I'm really happy. 4 or 5 things stands out. First is that IQ as a concept is actually robotization of humanity or the
Absolutely.
people. I absolutely am averse to this idea that how can a person's brain power be measured? It is
Oh yes.
infinite. You cannot measure the brain power. The person knowledge of brain says that philosophy that you cannot measure your own brain. It is beyond your imagination also. So this IQ concept, just for the sake that I want to make the listeners understand
Yes.
that there's a
Yes.
lot of talk about IQ, so they
Yes.
should not fall into the trap. Second is
Absolutely.
the trap of the mark sheet. That is also an area in which lots of pressure comes. The mark sheet doesn't determine whether you are great or you are low or you cannot become high. It's something that we should never look at. Third thing which I really agree with you is that dictionary is not the medium or not the path to your greatness. You can be very good in English or
Yes.
using words, but it's something in which you can make your people understand. A lot of writers fall into this trap of using synonymous thesaurus to write their novels and their books, thinking that by dropping a big words they can become great. But that's not the way things work.
Absolutely.
In
Absolutely.
fact, you have to be as simple. I understand reading Michael Feynman, the great physicist, the
Richard
great
Feynman.
lecture. Yeah, his lectures are very famous. So he used to,
Richard Feynman.
Richard Feynman. So
Yes.
he
Yes.
used to say that until unless you don't make people understand in the simplest, you are not able to understand yourself. It's
Absolutely.
as simple. If I'm not able to make fluid thinking
Absolutely.
understand a person whom it is meant to be, maybe
Yes.
I am wrong somewhere in my language or
Absolutely.
my way of making him understand or
Absolutely.
to the concept. So whatever you have thought is a very thing which everybody should ponder upon. There are so many takeaways from your answer to that
And
question.
I really want to add last line in that is that I really think that it is learner should never ever try to think low of himself or herself if you're not able to read in a particular language. It is a very colonial idea that that, oh, I'm not able to understand this concept because because you are reading in English. You have to think that if imagine if in the language you were born with, or your mother tongue, you would have excelled. So never think low of yourself because you are struggling with that. And that is the call that writers have to write in that language and keep on writing till you arrive at a language which everyone speaks about. So I think that a lot of children start thinking low of themselves, or low IQ, which is a redundant concept, that I don't know because I can't read this, because this must be a sophisticated, some kind of a sophisticated mind writing this. It is not. It is just a language, and it is just a very colonial thought. Like in Oxford, I tell you that it is only the Indians who judge themselves by the supremacy of their English. Italians, Germans, French, Polish, they don't even know. Like they're struggling so much, and it is absolutely fine that they're saying, they struggle when they speak, but they're fine. But it's only us who think, oh my God, I've made a grammatical error. So that's a very colonial
Yeah,
curse.
judging in terms of language, in terms of IQ, in terms
Yes.
of mark sheet, that
Yeah.
is what is in fact, the contradictions in our entire system of education and our society as well. So continuing further, there is one question which I think you have answered, but still, for the sake, two times it has been typed. Cognitive thinking. Again, that same thing is coming. Cognitive and fluid thinking. Can you marry both of them, or is it a different?
It is different. It is different, so because fluid thinking goes beyond cognitive thinking. It is also not stopping at the prowess of mind. It is going beyond in the space of soul. It is going beyond in the transcendental space. It is going into the space of wisdom, philosophy, or the questions which, sir, you asked about the core values and the value system. So it goes much beyond that lens which is limited by cognitive thinking. It is a thinking of the body. It is thinking of even the space beyond your body. So it's a much more, I would say, nuanced and sophisticated, if I can use that word, method of thinking, where it's like the difference between what I can say intelligence and wisdom. So intelligence may be cognitive, but wisdom probably fluid. Yeah.
Yeah, the last part is quite interesting. That fluid may be wisdom and intelligence may be cognitive. I really appreciate. In fact, the entire session is being revolved around this thing only. Wisdom is something that cannot be even defined. It is
Yeah.
something which you feel, something which you understand, that is talking about wisdom, but maybe you cannot define, you cannot measure. It's not a measurable concept like intelligence. You have IQ and so many EQ, other things to measure that. But wisdom may not. The wisdom scale, I don't think any Silicon Valley people have still discovered. Maybe in future we can have an app to measure wisdom also,
Yes.
to see whether the child is a wise or not, whether he is wisdom oriented or not. So again, another question has come, is that does fluid thinking encourage you to take risks in life, both professional and personal, and how is it so?
Absolutely, it is. It is one of the core engines of fluid thinking to take risks in your personal and professional life. And I give an example of a rebellious child in my book, whose father was a doctor, whose grandfather was a doctor, whose uncle was a doctor, and he refused, or rather, he failed to become a doctor, and he eventually joined an arts college, failed there, went on a journey, went on a boat for 5 years, and eventually became Charles Darwin. So I have given the called him a rebellious child, because we think that, okay, in India obviously you can't become anything else but a doctor if you are born in a doctor family. And Charles Darwin was not as super intelligent or a genius as we think of. He took the risk. He refused. He was kind of collecting beetles and rats and doing taxidermy at the time when other children were doing something else. He was bunking classes when he was in a Scottish medical school. He failed his classes. So, not saying that you should bunk your colleges and school, but I'm saying that, risk is has a negative connotation as a word. But I have to say that pushing the boundaries is the only reason, or only purpose of your life. Is that, you are not here born on a factory, sort of a treadmill. You are not someone who is like a product of a factory, which is one after the other appearing similar. It's one life. You come here and you push boundaries, and taking those risks and questioning and experimenting with your careers. Nothing major happens, rather, in the end. I mean, like, if you are courageous and you have understood or evolved, what worse could happen in the end? So I think that, that copybook style, that factory life, where you think that, oh, I'm not a risk taker, uh, is a life. I don't know whether, I mean, I call it chasing shadows, and I don't think so that that's what a fluid thinker should do. A fluid thinker, like I said, gave the example of Charles Darwin, and many of these people were experimenters and risk takers throughout. They challenged the norm, and were burnt, alive, and many scientists lost their lives because of that. And the world has seen so many people who've contributed, and yet if they would have kept quiet in their rooms, they would have not contributed what they did in the end. So I think certainly challenging the world norm requires risks, and I think that is what fluid thinking is. Essentially, it's a cornerstone of fluid thinking, that you can take risks in professional and personal life also, like, in thinking about your life as something which is beyond the societal stereotypes, is not bad.
Yes, Ashish. In fact, you have been very pertinent to that point that challenges can be taken with fluid thinkers have taken lots of challenges to the thing that they have even given up their life for the sake of fluid
Yes,
thinking. Yeah,
absolutely.
and in fact, I will add you one thing, that this concept of intelligence itself is wrong. Everybody is unique. You cannot, like, we have fingerprints which are different from you and me. You cannot say that this fingerprint is intelligent and this fingerprint is not intelligent. In fact,
Yes.
we are again trying to robotize and mechanize human beings. So everybody is unique. The what is different, which I feel, is that somebody takes a fluid route to thinking, somebody does not take a fluid route to thinking.
Yes.
So the one who takes fluid route to thinking and vocation, he succeeds, likely to be a game changer. It's not that he's more intelligent. What I can understand from your perspective is that, in a simple summary, nobody is born intelligent, but everybody has the right to take the path, and that path is fluid thinker. Be a
Absolutely.
nomad, be on the road to thinking beyond the obvious.
Yeah, I
So
have to add. I have to add to that unique. Each one of us is unique. I was watching, incidentally, Star Trek episode yesterday, and in that, Dr. McCoy tells Captain Kirk that, we have identified 3 million similar Earth-like planets in 3 million galaxies, and in all of them, Captain Kirk, you are the only one as Captain Kirk. So that is the uniqueness you hold. That in the millions of galaxies, in millions of planets, you are the only one who you are. And I think that uniqueness is to be cherished and respected the most. And I guess that is something which I feel that every person should feel good about themselves, that, they are the only one. And hence, you cannot be less intelligent, or you cannot lower yourself in that thought to begin with. And then you cultivate and learn and evolve continuously.
the problem is, Ashish, that we memorize and we do not think. That we are not being taught to think. We are
Yes.
actually, the rote learning, the school which we have, the rote learning system asks you to memorize and reproduce exactly the same. If you go a little bit here and there, you get the fear of getting your marks reduced, isn't
Yes.
it? So
Yes.
that from the very beginning constricts you and it doesn't allow you to think. The problem is that we are not creating thinkers. Thinker doesn't mean that he has to be a philosopher only. Thinker can be
Yes.
an entrepreneur also. Those who take
Absolutely.
risk in life are thinkers. Those who think
Absolutely.
beyond others, the general people who doesn't have that thinking, those who can take risk, professional or personal, they're all thinkers in their own way. So school is the one place where we can introduce this concept of thinking. At least think.
I think yes, absolutely. So, one of the things, one of the tragedies is that if we, like, who are the heroes of our society? Like, who are the, the poster boys or poster girls of our society? Where are the scientists? Where are the artists? How many scientists we revere about in India? Where are, I mean, there are hundreds of scientists, brilliant scientists working, but do we talk about them? Do they get media space? Do we tell about them to the children? No. So the thinkers of our societies are not respected as much as, you know the market forces are continuously pushing you in the direction where your poster, people are very different. And that thinking space in school, unfortunately, is that you do not want to become artist or scientist because nobody's telling you that, no, there's money in it, or there is respect in it, or you can change the society. You are being only pushed in the direction of a secure, heavily paid, cushioned position. And as parent also, selfishly push you in that direction. Nobody's saying that, okay, become a thinker. It will help you to lead a life which is harmonious, simpler, and fulfilling. Nobody has the courage to tell that. But if you can tell that to your children, that, don't worry, you don't clear that exam, don't worry, you can live a harmonious, simpler life by being a thinker. And by societal norms, you may appear a rebellion, but when you are in synchronicity with the nature and at peace, at calm, you can create your own calm and peace. And I think that is something which is a much larger definition of education. And unfortunately, most of the mainstream schools are not following that definition because, yeah, I mean, like, that's again
Yeah,
driven by.
Ashish, I fully agree with you, but I would like to add a little bit of caveat to that. In fact, it's not that we have not been thinking from now onwards. 20, 30 years, 40 years back, also this trend must have started with this. And I feel that where in the last 30 years, where is the great writer, Somerset Maugham and Oscar Wilde type of writers are also not coming. That means
Yes.
there's not also people whom we can revere
Yeah.
so much. It's another thing that we are also not reveling. They're great people, but there are also not greater people in the last
Yes.
30, 40 years. How many writers or how many exceptional scientists have we created as a world? I'm talking about, not one particular society.
Absolutely.
That how many Einsteins have we created till now? That rebellious mind. So the society somewhere is also not getting the icon which they should get, apart from the fact that we are also not celebrating the icons which are already existing there. So this is all a complexity in which we have to get around. And I'm really happy with the way you have explained the last part, is that you can be harmonious with your existence. What is the actual end of your existence? What do you want? You want a mark sheet, a certificate from society that you're happy, or you yourself is happy, but the other is saying you are not happy. That value judgment is making you unhappy.
Yes.
So there's a concept called looking glass self. When you look at your glass, you feel that the glass wants me to look like this, but I'm not looking the way glass looks at me. So I should condition myself to make the glass happy, not me.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
the fact is that most of that social media you talked about, we are looking at the glass. They
Yes.
are the glass, the false glass of consciousness.
Right.
And we are trying to attune ourselves to that rather than thinking that we are all unique. I cannot be Ashish, Ashish cannot be me. Until
Absolutely.
unless we don't agree to this fact, we cannot be at harmony with each other.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So uniqueness has to be celebrated, which are kindly conditioning into the name of mark sheets, in the name of jobs, into the name of IQ, in the name of stamping. We are labeling. We are becoming a labeling society. Success, failure. These are all value judges. Success is nothing. To me, a successful can be a failure to me.
Yes.
A, a successful person, which I feel you can't say as a failure to yourself.
I
So
think
the
I think
definition is very wide.
greatest education can be defined as the ability to tell your senses what success is for you. I think that could be the final outcome of education. And if you are able to successfully do that, you can be saved from many things of this world which constantly pushes something or the other on you. So I think that is the function of education, that you arrive at that definition and tell your senses, and your senses are in your control, that okay, this is what I think success is, and no matter what you show me, or entice me or throw that illusion at me, I'm not going to get affected by it because I have understood it personally. And if we leave the children of schools with that definition, I think we have educated them enough. But if not, they would constantly chase the shadows of illusion, and may become unhappy, or succumb to the market pressure.
This is a beautiful thing which you are talking about, changing the shadows, and that is what we should not be doing, and that's not many people are telling us not to do. The
Yes.
irony is that most of us are not telling others that do not chase shadows. In fact, we are encouraging them to chase shadows which
Yeah.
they cannot even grasp.
Exactly.
The fact is that materiality cannot ensure your success. This is a wrong concept. Nothing can anything. It's a kind of combination. You have to arrive at your own balancing thing. Like in physics, you see there is center of gravity for everything. It's not that every object has one center of gravity. Every object has different center of gravity. They are all unique. You cannot balance one object by saying that this object was balanced at this center of gravity, I will balance another object at the same center. That is the wrong which we are trying. We are trying to fix the society in a formula. E is
Correct.
equal to mc square cannot be written for humanity. It is
Correct.
for the inanimate world. The
Correct.
difference is that we are trying to compete with the inanimate world. The non-living and the living worlds are two separate. The thing which is good for rocket, that equation cannot be good for us, humanity. We are undefined. We are unique. That is why planet Earth only holds humanity. No other planet does. That is the unique. But other planet may be having rockets, maybe having other things, meteors and other things. Rockets may go there, but the fact is that we are a unique people. We have to define our success in a unique way. And I'm really happy with the way you have dealt with this concept, fluid thinking. Our mind should adapt to that as soon as possible. Otherwise, what will happen? Our entire existence will be a shadow, not chasing shadow. It will become a shadow. And that's what we are actually seeing. So it's quite a beautiful discussion I had with you, and I can think that a lot of people have also experienced joy at listening to you. I would like you to tell something about your book so that people can read that book. And I'd like you to give an Amazon link to your book in the chat box. But first, I would like to see your book. I have read it, but I would like the audience to see it.
This fluid thinking, or it's titled Fluid. And if you just Google, if you go to Amazon and just type Fluid and my name, which then you can find it there. And I have tried to keep it very simple, and have given, like it is said, that the approach applied by geniuses over centuries. So I've tried to elaborate on this thesis in the best possible manner by giving examples of fluid minds across centuries, across disciplines. And I hope that by the end, it touches probably most of the dimensions, whether it is disciplinary or otherwise, philosophical or even existence, experimental or not. Should we be fearful or not? Should we be chasing shadows or not? So I think it is about, I've tried to keep it as simpler and as all encompassing as possible. So I think this is uh, probably a fundamental book or a foundational book in order to understand, if you want to embrace an adaptive thinking, or a thinking which helps you break your stereotypes and biases and keeps you on the learning path. I guess this is, I've tried to keep it as simpler, and I'm very happy that a lot of people have written back to me, and have said that they have loved the book, and they have got sort of some answers from it. So I'm quite happy with it.
In fact, Ashish, I read a lot of book and I can tell you I read it twice.
Oh, Thank you.
It's such beautiful. In fact, I read it twice. Hardly I read book twice. In fact, I don't read a author more than two times. The same author, I don't read his third book because the again that concept of
Yes,
compartmentalization comes. I will start thinking like that author. We
absolutely.
should not. We should not. We are a nomad. We should not stop at one point. Go about traveling. Read everybody. There's
Yes.
no great author or a small author. Everybody is trying to tell something. Try to listen to that story.
In
So
fact, in the book, I gave an example of I told a small story where, whenever I go to schools, and most of the time the name of the authors which keep coming up are J.K. Rowling, and all these, like, current authors, and the same similar names. And once a girl in a school in Sharjah said that she was reading something on hypatia, and she wants to become a astrophysicist. And that was such a unique, delightful, sort of answer for me, because unless you're reading across, and you're reading, beyond the Harry Potters and, the current contemporary sort of famous books, you will not be able to grasp, the nuance of the wisdom which is prevailing in the world.
yeah, absolutely, Ashish. In fact, I would tell you that whether you recommend this book for class 10 or 8, 9 students, can we recommend those books as the reading material, or is it a little
No,
above the
I
school
think
level?
it is very, very. I think, like, for example, my daughter read it at 14, so I think, and understood it well. So I guess, I think 13, 14, you can very easily read it. And uh, I've tried. It's not a very dull book. It's a book which is written in a sort of a thread of a story, and I've tried to keep it very, sort of enthralling. So I think someone who is probably 13, 14 can also read it.
Ashish, I can guarantee it's an interesting read. In fact, I have recommended this book to few people also, and it's an interesting read. People can read. It's not very thing in which very abstract. I can tell you, it's not abstract. It
No.
flows. In fact, one thing about your book is that it flows like your fluid thinking.
Yes,
It
I
flows.
tried.
You have kept that thing that is flowing. It's not that it has stopped at some signpost, and after that you have to again take another route and then go and bring yourself
No,
back to that thing. It's
I was
flowing.
helped by, because I attempt poetry, and I attempt fiction, and that's why, I was able to kind of write it in that manner. So again, the fluid aspect of, because usually when you read non-fiction or an academic book, it tends to get, again, caught up in that very sort of a dense text. Here, I have not left the references and the technical sort of caliber of the book, but at the same time, I've kept it, brought the artistic sort of element into it, and kept it like in that beautiful sort of a flowy, rivery manner, where, it makes it like simpler and poetic in that sense, also.
Yeah, Ashish, in fact, I have one panel, one friend of mine, Joint Commission of Income Tax. So if I'll ask him if he wants to ask anything from his perspective, Dr. Wasim, he's a doctor of medicine in Unani, an
Oh,
Indian medicine of.
okay.
So, Dr. Wasim, आप कुछ पूछना चाहेंगे आशीष साहब से?
जी मेरे मन में कोई एक सवाल आ रहा है जो अभी यूनिकनेस की बात हुई है कि एवरीबॉडी इज यूनिक और अरबी में इसी को कहा जाता है कि लिकुल्ली फनिन रिजाल एक अरबी का वो है कि हर काम के लिए अलग अलग शख्स पैदा किए गए हैं
जी।
या ये कहा जाता है कि जिसने अपने आप को पहचान लिया उसने रब को पहचान लिया तो मेरा क्वेश्चन ये है कि यूनिकनेस को आइडेंटिफाई करने के लिए उसको पहचानने के लिए क्या कोई फार्मूला है ऐसा या कोई चीज है जिससे आदमी अपने आप को पहचान ले अपनी यूनिकनेस को पहचान ले
मुझे काफी, मतलब, बहुत ही बड़ा सवाल है, और
अच्छा
इनफैक्ट मैं अपने आप को थोड़ा छोटा मानता हूँ इसको आंसर करने के लिए। पर मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि अगर हम जल्दी खुद अपने आप से क्वेश्चन करने की एबिलिटी डेवलप कर लें कि हम यहाँ क्यों हैं और हमारा एग्जिस्टेंस का क्या मायने हैं और क्या मीनिंग है। और ये क्वेश्चंस की स्पेस अगर हम बच्चों को दे पाएं, अक्सर क्या होता है कि हम उन्हें एजुकेशन जब हम बात करते हैं तो हम ये कहते हैं कि एजुकेशन मतलब भाई फिजिक्स केमिस्ट्री बायोलॉजी है, तुम्हारे नंबर आए नहीं आए, और उनको एजुकेशन के मायने हम यही बताते हैं कि भाई ये जो सब्जेक्ट्स हैं यही तुम्हारी एजुकेशन है। जबकि अगर हम उन्हें ये स्पेस दें जिसमें हम उनसे भी ये क्वेश्चन करें कि आपको क्या लगता है, आप क्या सोचते हैं, या आपको लगता है आप यूनिक हैं, या तो पेरेंट हुए या गुरु हुए या सेजेस हुए या जो भी फिलोसोफर्स हुए, अगर वो इस तरह के सवाल करें या पेरेंट्स भी उन्हें वो ब्यूटीफुल स्पेस दें जिसमें वो अपने आप से क्यूरियोसिटी का जो एक 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 सीड है वो उनके अंदर आए, मुझे लगता है कि वो ही हम उनसे छीन लेते हैं। और वो बहुत लेटर जाके 40-45 में आता है, जब हम ऑब्वियसली थोड़े से ठीक हो जाते हैं और फिर हम पूछने लगते हैं कि मेरे एग्जिस्टेंस के मायने क्या हैं। तब हमें लगता है अच्छा हम कुछ ऐसी किताबें पढ़ते हैं, फिर हमें यूनिकनेस नज़र आती है। बट अगर हम यंग माइंड से ही ये सवाल करें कि आपके ड्रीम्स क्या हैं, आपको क्या लगता है सक्सेस क्या है, वो सवालों की स्पेस खत्म हो गई है। और आई थिंक वो चीज़ बहुत इम्पॉर्टेंट है। और हम जैसे आपने ये फ्रेज़ बोली, मैंने इनफैक्ट उसे लिखने की कोशिश करी पर मैं लिख नहीं पाया, तो उनका इंट्रोडक्शन अलग अलग एस्पेक्ट्स के इस तरह की रिच चीज़ों से, जिसे वो समझ के उन्हें लगे कि हाँ इस तरह की भी टेक्स्ट हैं, वो उनके माइंड में एक इग्निशन या इग्नाइट करेगी फायर, जिसमें वो सोचेंगे, जब वो ड्रीम करेंगे तो सोचेंगे कि अच्छा इसकी क्या मतलब हुआ। तो आई थिंक वो स्पेस हम उनसे छीन लेते हैं। आई थिंक दैट इज प्रोबेबली द ओनली वे वी कैन स्टार्ट वर्किंग ऑन दैट लाइन।
हाँ वसीम, और कुछ है आपके सवालात डॉक्टर साहब से, डॉक्टर आशीष साहब से?
इसी से मिलता जुलता एक अगला क्वेश्चन ये था कि थिंकिंग को डेवलप करने के लिए, या ये कि इन प्रैक्टिसेस को जो आपने अभी सजेशन दिए हैं, इनको अपने यहाँ लाने के लिए क्या एजुकेशनल सिस्टम में किसी बदलाव की जरूरत है, सिलेबस में या एक ही सब्जेक्ट में या चैप्टर में?
जी जी जी, अभी इनफैक्ट इंसिडेंटली जो एक बदलाव नेशनल एजुकेशन पॉलिसी में हुआ, जिसमें स्ट्रीम्स की मैंडेटरीनेस को ख़त्म करने की बात कही गई है, जिसमें हम कि आपने एक स्ट्रीम ले ली तो आप एक ही तरफ जा सकते हैं, वो एक बहुत बड़ा कदम है। आई थिंक सिलेबस हमारे बहुत पीछे हैं, हमारे करिकुलम्स बहुत पीछे हैं, और उसका कारण अगेन वो प्रेशर है। जैसे मुझे लगता है कि एक चीज़ जो मुझे इंग्लैंड और इंडिया में फ़र्क लगी, और इनफैक्ट मेरी दोनों डॉटर्स में भी मुझे ये फ़र्क नज़र आया, कि मेरी जो एल्डर डॉटर हैं वो चूँकि इंग्लैंड में उनकी इनिशियल परवरिश हुई, उनकी रीडिंग करने की जो इंटरेस्ट है वो काफ़ी ज़्यादा है। मतलब वहाँ पे बच्चे में नेचुरल तौर पे उसे बहुत ज़्यादा सब्जेक्टों का लोड नहीं डालते उसे। हमारे यहाँ क्या है कि इनफैक्ट बहुत अच्छी किताबें भी बच्चों के लिए नहीं बनी है। मतलब जैसे क्या है कि हम अगर कोई बच्चों की किताब देखेंगे ना तो वो पूरा पेज भरा हुआ है, जबकि रीडिंग एक वर्ड से एक लेटर से शुरू होती है। तो वहाँ रीडिंग को पहले आप में डेवलप किया जाता है कि आप रीड करें। मतलब रीडिंग इज द फर्स्ट स्टेप ऑफ एनीथिंग। और हमारे यहाँ क्या है कि रीड को मतलब मुझे नहीं लगता कि हम उस पर थोप देते हैं नॉलेज कि तुम मतलब मैथ कर लो, ये कर लो, वो कर लो। बाय द टाइम बच्चा फर्स्ट स्टैंडर्ड में है, वो पढ़ना नहीं चाहता किताबों को। मतलब रीडिंग इतनी एक इंटरेस्टिंग, जैसे मैं अपनी अदर डॉटर को देखता हूँ तो उनको इतना ज़्यादा सिलेबस है, इतना ज़्यादा करिकुलम है कि वो मतलब किताबों को एब्जॉर्ब करना वो एक चीज़ उनसे छीन ली जाती है। और आई थिंक बच्चों को अगर हम रीड करने की एबिलिटी डेवलप कर दें या खुद में भी, तो वो आई थिंक एक बहुत पोटेंट स्टेप है इस चीज़ को अडॉप्ट करने का। और करिकुलम में भी मुझे लगता है कि थोड़ा सा बहुत ज़्यादा मतलब वो ऐसा किया गया जैसे वो जो कॉकटेल होती है ना दवाइयों की, कि कॉन्कशन दे दिया आपने, मतलब कि भाई बुखार है तो 50 गोलियां दे दीजिए, कि कौन सी गोली लगेगी वो नहीं है। तो आपने मतलब बोला ठीक है यार 50 किताबें दे दें, आप यही सीखते रहेंगे और यही मतलब पढ़ लेंगे अपने हिसाब से। तो किताबें इतनी भारी हो गई हैं और इतनी अजीब से तरीके से लिखी हुई हैं कि वो आपको डर लगने लगता है उनसे। तो इसीलिए मुझे लगता है कि बहुत कम पढ़ें, लेकिन फंडामेंटल उनके बहुत स्ट्रांग होने चाहिए। लेकिन अब वो अनफॉर्चुनेटली स्कूल्स हमारे जो हैं उनमें ये फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी नहीं है, तो आई थिंक करिकुलम में ये फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी मिल जाए। ऑल्टरनेटिव एजुकेशन की स्पेस को ख़त्म नहीं करना चाहिए। एक मुझे ये लगता है कि एजुकेशन को इस फ्रीडम की बहुत ज़रूरत है कि भाई आपको वो एक मैंडेटरीनेस नहीं होनी चाहिए कि यार ये चार आपने पढ़ी हैं और बस यही है। तो आई थिंक वो वहाँ ईज आउट होना चाहिए, लेकिन वहाँ हम और कॉम्प्लेक्स करते जा रहे हैं उसे, और उसे मतलब बोझिल सा करते जा रहे हैं।
नहीं, सही मतलब कि आशीष, मुझे याद आता है कबीर जो फिलोसफर थे और सेंट थे, उन्होंने यही कहा था कि हम लोगों ने काफी किताबें पढ़ी पर दो जो 2.5 अक्षर का जो प्रेम शब्द है वो कम पढ़ते हैं। तो आपने वही बात कही कि 50 किताबें तो दे दिया पर जो सही है जो दवा, अब
बिल्कुल।
वो नहीं दिए। डोलो भी दे दिए, क्रोसिन भी दे दिए, वो भी
एब्सोल्युटली।
दे दिए, ये भी दे दिया, आयुर्वेदिक भी ले लिया, यूनानी भी ले लिया। किसी तरह से कोई भी दवा काम कर जाए,
बिल्कुल,
दुआ भी
क्योंकि
काम कर जाए, कुछ फर्क
रीडिंग
नहीं पड़ता।
कंपल्शन है। मतलब आप किसी बच्चे को पढ़ते देखेंगे ना, तो आप उसे देखेंगे कि वो इंटरेस्ट नहीं है, वो उसको एक सोसाइटल फोर्स है। जबकि बाहर उन्होंने उस चीज को पकड़ लिया। अब क्या है, हमारे साथ सबसे बेसिक प्रॉब्लम इंग्लिश। अब इंग्लिश घर घर में हमारी लैंग्वेज दूसरी, किताब दूसरे में, तो मुझे फैसिनेशन कैसे आएगा, स्टोरी में कैसे क्रिएट करूंगा? पहले तो मैं लैंग्वेज समझूं, फिर लैंग्वेज के बाद मैं मेरी वर्नैकुलर टंग कुछ और जा रही है, फिर मैं फोर्स करूंगा कि नहीं आप इंग्लिश की किताबें पढ़िए। अब उसकी पर्टिकुलर लैंग्वेज में वैसी किताब होनी चाहिए। तो हम पहली तो सीढ़ी वहीं पे ही तोड़ दी कि भाई उसका जो लैंग्वेज होता है वो वहाँ, वो जब पढ़ता है तो उसे बहुत कुछ एलियन सा लगने लगता है इनिशियली, ये मेजॉरिटी ऑफ द चिल्ड्रन के लिए। तो वो सिर्फ काम पूर्ति का पढ़ता है उसके बाद कि नहीं यार ठीक है, अब हैरी पॉटर का इतना नाम है तो चलिए पढ़ लेते हैं। लेकिन एक्चुअल में अगर आपकी कहानी आपको बिल्कुल आपके ही तरीके से बताई जा रही है, पढ़ाई जा रही है, तो आप पढ़ेंगे। तो वो, लेकिन अब ये जो चीज़ है ये इसको कोई बहुत ज़्यादा अहमियत देता नहीं है।
आशीष जी, आजकल हम लोग पढ़ना तो कम कर दिए हैं, लिखना भी उससे ज्यादा कम कर दिए हैं, देखना ज्यादा है। सिर्फ आंखों की मतलब की दुनिया रह गई है और जुबान की दुनिया रह गई है।
बिल्कुल।
पढ़ना और लिखना कम से
जी।
कम होता जा रहा है, और ये डायरेक्ट रिलेटेड टू योर फ्लूइड थिंकिंग है। मैं बड़ी सीरियसनेस से अब कहूंगा कि पढ़ना और लिखना, इससे फ्लूइड थिंकिंग डेवलप होती है। देखना भी जरूरी है, कोई जरूरी, बट ये किसी चीज को एक पे हावी नहीं, एक बैलेंसिंग एक्ट होना। अगर सिर्फ आप 90% से वीडियोज ही देख के और आप उसको समझते हैं कि पढ़ाई हो गया हमारा, तो रीडिंग इज वन ऑफ द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट पार्ट। देन राइटिंग इट, व्हेन यू राइट विथ योर ब्रेन, नॉट विथ योर हैंड, विथ योर थिंकिंग। वो फ्लूइड थिंकिंग से आप लिखते हैं, कलम से नहीं लिखते हैं। तो वो
नहीं,
चीज कम होती जा रही है, उसकी
तो
स्पेस।
बहुत ही बड़ा डेंजरस सा एक ट्रेंड है कि हम, देखिए आप विकिपीडिया यूट्यूब से आप अपनी मास्टरी नहीं डेवलप कर सकते। जो एक कनेक्शंस हैं नॉलेज पॉइंट्स के बीच में, वो कनेक्शंस जब आप रीड करते हैं अच्छी किताबें, तो वो कनेक्शंस आपको मजबूत पता चलते हैं कि कनेक्शंस क्या। अब आपने शैलो शैलो एक कोई वीडियो देख लिया और ये बोला जाए कि मैंने सब यूट्यूब से सीख लिया, मतलब फॉर यू, मतलब that cultural nuance, that civilization's advancements, that history of humankind, evolution, biology, physics, chemistry, मतलब how much you can watch, and how that one sentence can even give you what not a 1 hour video can give. तो वो तो बहुत ही रीडिंग इज आई थिंक द कोर ऑफ डेवलपिंग इवॉल्व माइंड, आई गेस।
सही बात है आशीष जी। मुझे याद आता है कि इनफैक्ट अब मैं इसको लिंक करूंगा दूसरे एस्पेक्ट से, कि मैं अक्सर भी एग्जांपल देता हूं और काफ़ी जगह दे चुका हूं कि मन्ना डे साहब से पूछा गया कि भाई आज के गाने में और पहले के गाने में क्या फ़र्क है, कि अब ऐसे नहीं है कि अब ये आर्ट जैसा नहीं लगने लगा है, आर्टिस्टिक नहीं रहे और बहुत मानी खेज नहीं रहे, जो कि इंसानियत के ऊपर हो, सोसाइटी के ऊपर हो, बहुत ज़्यादा मतलब कि इंडिविजुअलिस्टिक होती जा रही है। एक लड़की के ही मामलात को बस उसको लिखे जा रहे हैं, और जो समाज है और जो देश है और जो दुनिया है उसके बारे में बहुत कम मालूमात है गाने के जरिए, और वो फ्लुएंसी भी नहीं है, फ्लूइड लेवल भी नहीं है। तो जानते उन्होंने क्या कहा? पहले हम गाने लिखते थे सुनने के लिए, गाने का मतलब ही होता था सुनना, गुनगुनाना। अब हम सिर्फ देखने के लिए लिखते हैं। तो जब आपका कंसेप्ट ही बदल जाता है, अब गाना का मतलब है वीडियो कोरियोग्राफी, नॉट द रिटन पार्ट, नॉट द थिंकिंग पार्ट। सो आपके फिर वही बात पे मैं आता हूं कि डायरेक्शन ही हम लोगों ने बदल दिया। अगर तरक्की करना है तो फिर आपको डायरेक्शन जो है एक कॉग्निटिव या साइकोमेट्रिक, इससे हट के एक फ्लूइड थिंकिंग के डायरेक्शन में आना होगा, वो पाथ पकड़ना होगा, जिससे
नहीं,
तभी जाके
आप
वो फिल्म इंडस्ट्री में भी खूबसूरती आएगी और आपके हर पहलू में खूबसूरती आएगी। कहने का मतलब है वो
मतलब
डायरेक्शन।
पिछले 300-400 साल का जो लिटरेचर है, जिस पे बेस्ड बॉलीवुड के इनिशियल लिरिसिस्ट या सिंगर्स आए, हम आज देखें कि उनका एक्सपोजर कितना है यंग जनरेशन में। वो एक्सपोजर ही नहीं है। वो जो लिरिक्स का, वो इनफैक्ट बॉलीवुड राइटिंग को तो लोअर माना जाता था। जो मेन मतलब जो लिटरेचर राइटिंग थी, जो जो मेन गजल थी, जो उनके
उस जमाने की
उस
बिल्कुल
जमाने,
बिल्कुल
तो कि भाई
सच
ये तो
बात है।
डाइल्यूटेड वर्जन है, ये तो डाइल्यूटेड वर्जन है और पॉपुलर लोगों के लिए ये हम लिख रहे
हम्म।
हैं। वो वो तो एक्सपोजर, वो ट्रेनिंग, वो आपकी मतलब पूरी एक जो लाइन है, वो तो आज मुझे नहीं लगता कि किसी कोई यंग मेजॉरिटी ऑफ देम को वो आइडिया भी है, एक्सपोजर भी है कि वो 300 साल का या 400 साल का आपने एक पढ़ा और फिर आपका एक गाना आया और उसकी रिफ्लेक्शंस आए उसके अंदर। तो जितना हम वो उससे छीनेंगे, वो उतना और वीक होता जाएगा, उतना वीक होता जाएगा। वर्ड्स मतलब तो वर्ड्स के आई मीन ऑब्वियसली अब तो वर्ड्स इनफैक्ट इतने डेंजरस हो गए हैं कि आई डोंट इवन अंडरस्टैंड कि हाउ दे आर अलाउड इन द सोसाइटी। मतलब मुझे कई बार लगता है कि पता नहीं कौन कौन इसको अलाउ कर रहा है ये वर्ड। मतलब मैं जब अपनी स्कूलिंग देखता हूँ तो हमारे यहाँ ड्रग्स के कैंपेन के वीडियो होते थे, और अब के गानों में आप बोल रहे हैं कि ड्रग्स लिया जाना चाहिए। मतलब मुझे समझ में नहीं आता है कि कौन है जो इसे मतलब पास करता है, सोसाइटी में आता है तो एक बच्चा उस लिरिक्स को सुनता है कि यार मतलब शराब ने ये किया आपको या ड्रग्स ने ये किया। आई डोंट इवन अंडरस्टैंड। मतलब मुझे तो कई बार ये सेंस ही नहीं आता है कि ये है क्या। तो वो लिरिक्स की तो कहाँ से स्टेज, एंड you're normalizing that regression, that drinking, that regressive society aspect in that song, which is so masculine in
वही
that picture.
वही बात है ना, जो आइकन्स है, जो मैं वही बात कह रहा था, जो लिखने वाले उनकी सलाहियत भी, सोचने की
बिल्कुल,
सलाहियत भी एक बहुत ही कम महदूद है, मतलब कि एकदम
बिल्कुल,
महदूद, उससे ज्यादा सोच ही नहीं सकते, क्योंकि उन्होंने दुनिया ही नहीं देखा है, उन्होंने पढ़ा ही नहीं है, उन्होंने लिखा ही नहीं है। तो उनकी ख्यालात जो है उसकी एक्सपेंस जो दायरा है बस बहुत ही छोटी सी है, आप
बिल्कुल,
समझ
बिल्कुल।
लीजिए, वो
और
दायरा
आप क्रॉस ओवर करना ही नहीं
होराइजन
चाहते।
ही नहीं है।
एब्सोल्युटली, जैसे क्रॉस ओवर करके आप पढ़िए। जैसे मेरा अगर उर्दू इतनी अच्छी नहीं है, लेकिन मैं जब तक उसे ये नहीं बताऊंगा, अगेन फ्लूइड थिंकिंग और क्रिटिकल थिंकिंग का डिफरेंस, कि मुझे कॉन्शियस होना पड़ेगा पहले कि मेरी अच्छी नहीं है, मुझे सीखना है, मुझे पढ़ना है, मुझे समझना है। तो मैं जब तक वो स्टेप नहीं लूंगा और लेके उस डायरेक्शन में उन लिटरेचरों को नहीं पढ़ूंगा, तब तक I can be critical thinker, but I'm not a fluid thinker. As in I have to be conscious of my limitation and limitation of my disciplinary bias, कि यार ये मेरा बायस आ रहा है मेरे अंदर, मुझे इसे रोकना है। तो जब तक मैं वो पढ़ नहीं पाऊंगा तो मैं ये जान ही नहीं सकता कि उन्होंने क्या लिखा। फैज हैं, गालिब हैं, खैर ये आज के जनरेशन, जो आज की स्कूलिंग है, कि उनकी डेप्थ ऑफ दैट राइटिंग का एक्सपोजर तो मुझे लगता नहीं कि हो सकता है। और वो धीरे धीरे गायब होता जा रहा है, बैक बर्नर पे जा रहा है, या आई डोंट इवन नो कि पीपल इवन वांट टू डिस्कस दैट टॉपिक एनी मोर। कि लोग लगता है यार ये तो मतलब द 5 second वीडियो हैज ओवरपावर्ड एवरीथिंग, एंड आई थिंक दैट इज द ट्रेजेडी, दैट इज द ट्रेजेडी।
आशीष, कि इनफैक्ट हम तो बात करते करते 2 घंटे भी हो गए, पता भी नहीं चला।
ओ माय गॉड।
ये फ्लूइड, मतलब कि ये भी एक गारंटी है इस बात की कि बहुत ही फ्लूइड सेशन रही, इनफैक्ट फ्लो रहा। तो ये इस बात की अलामत है, दलील है कि आपकी फ्लूइड थिंकिंग में वो ताकत है कि 2 घंटे भी किस तरह से गुजर गए पता नहीं चला। तो फ्लूइड थिंकिंग की यही ब्यूटी है। जाते जाते जैसे हमारा ये दस्तूर रहता है, रवायत रहता है कि हम स्पीकर से पूछते हैं और कहते हैं कि भाई जाते जाते आप कुछ 2-4 शब्दों में या फिर 2-4 लफ्जों में कुछ मानी खेज बातें हमारे ऑडियंस को बता दीजिए, जो पार्टिंग टेक जो रहता है, जो हमेशा जिंदगी में याद रहे, जो एक इंप्रेशन रहे माइंड पे कि भाई इस सेशन का ये टेक अवे है, अगर 2-4 सेंटेंस में कहे तो वो आपसे मैं गुजारिश करूंगा कि जरा मेरे ऑडियंस के लिए आप बताएं।
एक चीज़ जो मैं कहना चाहता हूँ, मैं जब भी नॉलेज या विजडम को देखता हूँ तो मैं एक चीज़ अक्सर कहता हूँ कि हम नॉलेज और विजडम को एक फिस्ट में पकड़ें, लेकिन हमारी फिस्ट थोड़ी सी ढीली होनी चाहिए, जिसमें हम ये स्कोप रखें कि दूसरा नॉलेज आ सके और दूसरा विजडम आ सके, और उस फिस्ट के पावर को और प्रेशर को हम उस डायनेमिक्स को का ही सारा खेल है फ्लूइड थिंकिंग और वाइज होना, कि हम क्या एब्जॉर्ब कर पा रहे हैं और हमारा माइंड कितना इवॉल्व हो रहा है। तो नॉलेज इन अ फिस्ट with slightly loosened grip is perhaps what I define as a mind which is ready to evolve every minute. एंड आई थिंक दैट करेज की, जैसे मैंने बात कही कि एक्सपेरिमेंटल करेजियस होना, क्योंकि हर इंसान हमारी जैसी डिप्राइव सोसाइटी में वो नहीं बन सकता, वो पोजीशन नहीं हासिल कर सकता जो चंद लोगों के लिए। तो हम जब तक एक्सपेरिमेंटल नहीं होंगे और हमारी सेंसेस पे कंट्रोल नहीं रहेगी सक्सेस की डेफिनेशन निकालने के लिए, कि मैं जानता हूं कि सक्सेस ये है, तब तक हम सोसाइटी के प्रेशर और मार्केट के प्रेशर से हमेशा दबे रहेंगे। क्योंकि चंद लोग होंगे जो लकी होंगे, जिनको एक पोजीशन मिल सकती है, एक एग्जाम क्लियर हो सकता है, या वो लोग एलीट एनवायरनमेंट में पैदा हो सकते हैं। हम अपने बच्चों के लिए भी वो चीज़ नहीं इमेजिन कर सकते हैं, भले हम पहुंच गए। तो आई थिंक जब तक आप वो करेज नहीं डेवलप करेंगे जिसमें आपकी खुद की डेफिनेशन ऑफ सक्सेस की निकल जाए, जिसमें आप अपने बच्चों को अगर एक्सपेरिमेंटेशन की राह पे देखें तो डरे नहीं, और समझें कि शायद मुझे अपने बायसेस भी दूर करने की ज़रूरत है। सो आई थिंक that is the core which I would want to leave with, that developing your own definition of courage, where you are able, developing your own definition of success by telling your five senses that you are able to not succumb to the market pressure, or you will never succumb to the pressure, but you will stand on your own as far as courage is concerned, and will always be ever so fluid and ever so evolving and a learner for life, I guess.
बहुत ही खूबसूरती से आपने एक्सप्लेन किया आशीष। इनफैक्ट वो बहुत मुट्ठी वाली बात मुझे बहुत पसंद आया कि इनफैक्ट मुट्ठी को इतनी जोर से मत दबा के रखिए कि कुछ भी ना आ सके उसमें, कुछ ढीली रखिए कि जिससे बहुत सारी इल्म आ सके। इसी पे अल्लामा इकबाल साहब का एक शेर मैं आपको बताऊंगा, मुझे हमेशा याद रहता है। इनफैक्ट मैंने निकाल भी लिया, जो आपने कहा ये मेरे दिमाग में भी हमेशा रहता है। चाहिए खानाए दिल को कोई मंजिल खाली, चाहिए खानाए दिल को कोई मंजिल खाली, शायद आ जाए कहीं से मेहमान अजीज। इनफैक्ट अपने दिल को इतना बंद मत कर लीजिएगा, कोई अगर अजीज, कोई अगर चाहने वाला आ रहा है तो उसके लिए दरवाजा अपना खोल सके। अपने दिल में हमेशा कुछ जगह खाली रखनी चाहिए, दिमाग में हमेशा खाली रखिए कि कुछ नॉलेज आ सके आपके अंदर में। तो बहुत ही खूबसूरती से आपने इस बात को समझाया, तो मुझे अचानक ये बात याद आ गया कि मैं भी इसमें कुछ ऐड कर दूं। तो आशीष साहब, ये प्लेजर रहा हमारी, मतलब कि खुशकिस्मती है कि आपने इस सेशन को ऐसा स्पीकर मतलब कि नवाजा। बहुत ही अच्छा लगा आपकी हर बातों को, और एक एक बात में विजडम थी, एक एक बात में एक, जो मैं कह लूं कि सच्चाई थी, सदाकत थी। इनफैक्ट मैं इसको रूहानियत से भी जोड़ता हूं, स्पिरिचुअलिटी से भी जोड़ता हूं, क्योंकि अगर आप देखें रूहानियत का जो फील्ड है वो एक्चुअली अपने दायरा को एक्सपैंड करने का है। ये नहीं है कि आप महदूद रह जाए, इसी लाठी को पकड़ के आप कह ले कि सच्चाई यही है। सच्चाई तो कोई नहीं जानता कि क्या है, कहां जाके रुकेगी ये कारवां, कहां रुकेगी किसी को नहीं मालूम। यही बात तो थी दुनिया में। अगर आप देखें तो आइंस्टाइन ने एक ही जगह गलती की और इस बात को उसने एहसास किया, माना भी। इससे पहले उन्होंने एक इक्वेशन भी बना दिया कि यूनिवर्सल कांस्टेंट बोल के लैम्डा बना दिया उन्होंने, इक्वेशन भी दे दिया, वाहवाही भी लूट लिया उन्होंने, किताबें भी लिख दी। जब ये हबल ने डिस्कवरी किया कि यूनिवर्स तो एक्सपैंड कर रहा है 1929 में, तो पूरी दुनिया उलट गई कि यूनिवर्स कांस्टेंट नहीं है। तो आइंस्टाइन साहब ने कहा कि हमारी जिंदगी की सबसे बड़ी भूल है कि हमने कांस्टेंट बना लिया और लास्ट लास्ट तक इस बात पे रोते रहे कि हमें इतनी मतलब कि जो कंस्ट्रिक्टेड मेरा माइंड नहीं होना था कि मैंने यूनिवर्स को ही कांस्टेंट मान लिया। तो बात वही है जो मैं आखिर में कहूंगा कि फ्लूइड थिंकिंग की कोई दायरा नहीं है, कहीं उसका पड़ाव नहीं है, कहीं खेमा नहीं है। ये आप जितना सोच सके, जिस दौर तक आप जा सके उस दौर तक जा सकते हैं, जहां तक ट्रैवल कर सकते हैं। एक मुसाफिर का कोई जगह नहीं होता, एक नोमैड का कोई प्लेस नहीं होता, एक ट्रैवलर का कहीं पर भी पड़ाव नहीं होता। वो तो रमता जोगी बहता पानी वाली बात है, चलता ही रहता है। तो फ्लूइड थिंकिंग मेरे ख्याल से हमें सबको अपनी जिंदगी में अख्तियार करना चाहिए। कितनी जगह हम लोग करते भी हैं विदाउट नोइंग दैट इज अ फ्लूइड थिंकिंग।
एब्सोल्युटली, बिल्कुल।
जब एक खूबसूरत गुफ्तगू होती है वो भी एक फ्लूइड थिंकिंग है। हम
एब्सोल्युटली।
आपकी बात को समझ रहे हैं, आप हमारी बात को समझ रहे हैं, दोनों एक खूबसूरती से इस मतलब की जो है मुहासबे को और इस गुफ्तगू को आगे बढ़ाती है, भी फ्लूइड थिंकिंग की बात है। तो
बिल्कुल।
कंस्ट्रिक्टेड नहीं, जैसा आपने कहा ना कि आप खुद को करेज रखिए कि आप मार्केट फोर्सेस से सकम ना हो जाए,
एब्सोल्युटली।
किसी चीज से सकम ना हो जाए जिसकी वजह से आपको अपना थिंकिंग कैपेसिटी या सोचने की जो सलाहियत है उसको आप दूसरे के लिए चेंज करके इस ट्रैक पे ले आए। तो वो फिर क्या हो जाता है, वो एक तरह से आर्टिफिशियल थिंकिंग हो जाती है, आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस। इनफैक्ट मैं इसी को आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस कहूंगा, जो
एब्सोल्युटली।
रोबोटाइज्ड है, जो अल्गोरिथमिक है। हमारी माइंड अल्गोरिथमिक नहीं है, इट इज बियॉन्ड कंसेप्शन। तो आशीष साहब, जो मैं समझ सका मैंने आपको बताया। अब जाते जाते आपसे कुछ एक और लफ्ज सुन के इस किस्से को खत्म करेंगे, और बहुत ही मतलब कि हमारी खुशनसीबी रही कि आपने इस सेशन में आके हम लोगों को
नहीं, नॉट एट
मतलब बहुत अच्छी अच्छी बातें कही। और मैं सबको कहूंगा कि किताब जरूर पढ़िएगा, मैंने 2 बार पढ़ी है, मुझे बहुत अच्छी लगी। और अपने
ऑल।
बच्चों को अगर एक पॉजिटिव माइंड सेट देना है, जो मतलब कि रोटे लर्निंग से अलग है, चैलेंज हिज थिंकिंग कैपेसिटी और हर थिंकिंग कैपेसिटी, देन डू रीड दिस बुक। इनफैक्ट फ्लूइड थिंकिंग के अलावा हमारे पास और थिंकिंग करने की गुंजाइश भी नहीं है इस दौर में। इस दौर को बहुत जरूरत है
थैंक यू
कि
सो मच।
हम दायरे से आगे देखें।
मैं बिल्कुल इसीलिए, क्योंकि मैं इनफैक्ट जाते जाते ये कहूँगा कि मैं एक बड़ा मतलब मेरे साथ एक चीज़ है कि मैं दुनिया को बच्चों की नज़र से देखता हूँ। और हर चीज़ में मैं वो लेंस लगाता हूँ, हर चीज़ में। जैसे मैंने लिरिक्स के लिए भी कहा, तो मेरे को ये लगता है कि इज देयर अ चाइल्ड इन द रूम और इज देयर अ चाइल्ड आउटसाइड। तो हर चीज़ में अगर हम बच्चों की नज़र से देखेंगे तो हम एक ऐसी सोसाइटी की की कल्पना कर सकते हैं जिसमें हम उनके राइट्स को और उनके सोल को नरिश कर रहे हैं। और इसीलिए मुझे लगता है कि हम जब मार्केट फोर्सेस से सकम होके या हम अपने ऊपर भी ये प्रेशर लेते हैं जिसमें हमारी अंडरस्टैंडिंग या किसी बच्चे की या किसी यंग माइंड की अंडरस्टैंडिंग ये होती है कि अगर मुझे ये नहीं मिला तो मैं फेल हो जाऊंगा या फेलियर हूँ। वो सिचुएशन से अगर हम बच्चों को बचा सके, हमारे या दूसरों के, और उन्हें समझा सके कि योर लाइफ एंड योर evolution, your personal evolution is paramount। और अगर आप किसी भी चीज़ से दिल लगा के अपने आप को सेन रख सकें और उस प्रेशर से बाहर आ सकें, सो यू विल बी एन एजुकेटेड पर्सन रादर देन वी टेलिंग देम कि तुम मतलब ये चीज़ नहीं है या वो चीज़ नहीं है। क्योंकि वो ही रास्ता है एजुकेशन का, और वो ही चीज़ मुझे लगता है कि फ्लूइड थिंकिंग का डोर उसी रास्ते की तरफ ले जाता है। एंड आई थिंक दैट इज द कोर ऑफ इट, दैट इफ सोसाइटी स्टार्ट थिंकिंग थ्रू द लेंस ऑफ चाइल्ड, that what kind of pressure we are throwing at them every day, every minute, and we have almost turning the society into animalistic societies, uh, then we may realize that which direction we need to go and take us।
मैं बिल्कुल मुत्तफिक हुआ, आई रियली एग्री विथ यू। इनफैक्ट मैं ही नहीं, गालिब साहब भी आपसे एग्री करते हैं, मिर्जा गालिब साहब भी। उनका एक मशहूर शेर है, बाजी चाहे अतफाल है दुनिया मेरे आगे, बाजी चाहे अतफाल है दुनिया मेरे आगे, होता है शब रोज तमाशा मेरे आगे। अगर आप दुनिया को बच्चों की निगाह से देखेंगे तो तमाशा के सिवा और कुछ भी नहीं है। तो आपने बिल्कुल सही कहा कि बच्चों की निगाह से हमें देखना है कि उनको क्या देना है, वो समझ पा रहे हैं कि नहीं पा रहे। अगर आप 65 साल के आदमी को समझा पा रहे उसी बात को, अगर आप 10 साल के बच्चों को भी समझा पा रहे, उनके पर्सपेक्टिव से भी अगर आप कह रहे हैं, तो इसमें खूबसूरती है, इसमें नॉलेज की कहीं ना कहीं सक्सेस है।
बिकॉज जो
तो
सेक्टेरियन जो डिफ्रेंसिएशन है, जो झगड़े हैं, जो वॉइस का रेज होना है, जो हम जिस तरह का मीडिया क्रिएट करते हैं, वीडियोस क्रिएट करते हैं, वो सारी चीज़ें आपको ऑब्जेक्शनेबल लगने लग जाएंगी अगर आप ये देखेंगे कि यंग माइंड पे क्या इंप्रेशन क्रिएट हो रहा है। आप क्या इंप्रेशन क्रिएट करना चाहते हैं कि यंग माइंड पर, आपको सब ऑब्जेक्शनेबल लगने लग जाएगा तुरंत। अभी तो यू योरसेल्फ आर हैव बिकम, यू नो, सोसाइटी हैज बिकम लाउडर, हैज एजिटेटेड, हैज बिकम अलर्ट, whereas a child will, if you start thinking from a child will think यार ये तो कितना violent है, ये कितना मतलब गलत है. So that is something which I think that, you know, people start thinking like that, they will start understanding the kind of damage they are doing to the society.
नहीं, बहुत सही बात। हम लोग जो है मतलब कि चाइल्ड पर्सपेक्टिव से बहुत कम सोचते हैं, पर दुनिया तो उनके लिए ही है, फ्यूचर तो वही बनाएंगे। कल के हमारे जो मुस्तकबिल के जो मतलब के समझ लिए जो लीडरशिप है वो उनके पास ही है, उनके माइंड के लीडरशिप है, लीडरशिप ऑफ आइडियाज है, सब थॉट लीडरशिप सब तो इनके पास ही है, बच्चों के पास। तो वही मुस्तकबिल पे ध्यान देना चाहिए। मैं समझता हूँ हर चीज का मसला फ्लूइड थिंकिंग में। फ्लूइड थिंकिंग इतनी बड़ी चीज है, मैं बता दूं कि माइंड को आपको बड़ा कर देता है कि आप ये चीज को भी मानते हैं, इस चीज को भी मानते हैं, फिर उससे एक रास्ता निकालते हैं। ऐसा नहीं है कि आप किसी चीज पे अटक गए, सुई अटक गई एक जगह पे, इस तरह की बातें नहीं है। तो बहुत ही अच्छा रहा आशीष साहब आपसे बात करके। मुझे लगता है कि आपने इतना टाइम दिया, इसके लिए मैं शुक्रगुजार हूं आपका, और मैं सब ऑडियंस की तरफ से शुक्रगुजार हूं, और मैं डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ मतलब माइनॉरिटी वेलफेयर की तरफ से आपका शुक्रगुजार हूं कि, और स्टडी सर्कल की तरफ से कि आपने इतना टाइम दिया। मैं चाहता हूं कि ऐसी बातों को लाओ जो सिर्फ डायरेक्टली लिंक ना हो आपके इससे कि मतलब कि एम्प्लॉयमेंट ईयर या फिर कि जो आपका एग्जाम्स है। मैं चाहता हूं कि दायरा बढ़ाया जाए, जरा थिंकिंग का स्कोप वाइडर किया जाए। जब ये हम दायरा बढ़ाएंगे, आप जैसे शख्सियत से बात करके उनकी व्यू पॉइंट लेके, तो क्या होगा कि हम कल के फ्यूचर थॉट लीडरशिप को जन्म दे रहे हैं। थिंकिंग कैपेसिटी, थिंकिंग कैपिटल ऑफ द सोसाइटी को बढ़ाना है। वो अगर बढ़ जाएगी तो बहुत सारे खेल जो है वो खत्म हो जाएंगे। यहाँ की जो बहुत सारी बातें जो हैं, जो छोटी छोटी बातें हैं, और जो वो सब चीज अपने आप खत्म हो जाएगी। तो आशीष साहब, थैंक यू वेरी मच।
I have to thank you, sir, and everyone, and Dr. Wasim, you, and every person, people who asked questions and who stayed till the end. काफी इतना समय मुझे आइडिया नहीं था कि इतना समय हो गया, पर I thank you from the bottom of my heart कि you gave me the opportunity to share my ideas and thoughts. So I'm शुक्रिया तहे दिल से.
शुक्रिया, एंड वी आर ऑल्सो थैंकफुल टू दैट। हाँ डॉक्टर वसीम बताइए।
थैंक यू सर, थैंक यू।
Thank you so much, Doctor. Thank you. Thank you.
ओके डॉक्टर आशीष साहब, विल मीट अगेन।
All right. Thank you.
गुड लक टू यू, बेस्ट विशेस। थैंक यू।
Thank you.